Hello, I'm Jane Dutton, and in the next half an hour we'll take a look at the day's top local and international news. This is ENCA. Can Donald Trump survive the political storm unfolding around him in America? We are live in Washington. Zimbabwe in suspense as the Constitutional Court hears a challenge to its election results. And the fallout continues from a holidaymaker's racist remarks on social media. Is it the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency? His former lawyer, Michael Cohen, yesterday pled guilty to a litany of criminal offenses. But even worse, he implicated the American president of conspiring in a crime. At the same time, another trusted advisor, Paul Manafort, was found guilty of 8 counts of fraud. And Manafort's case was only the first criminal case arising from a probe into alleged Russian election meddling. Well, the White House addressed reporters just a short while ago. Let's listen.
I'm not going to get into the back and forth details. I can tell you, as the president has stated on numerous occasions, he did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him in this. And just because Michael Cohen made a plea deal doesn't mean that that implicates the president on anything.
Well, to make sense of this all, Simon Marks is in Washington. I guess Donald Trump was happy that somebody finally came out and supported him then.
Yes, but only just, really. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has just left the podium here in Washington, D.C. after repeating all of that like a mantra throughout her press briefing. The president did nothing wrong. There are no charges against him. Anytime the questions got particularly sticky, she referred reporters to the president's outside legal counsel. She seemed pretty prickly, and she seemed as though she didn't especially want to be there carrying water for President Donald Trump. She is the only person here in Washington who has spoken out in his defense over the last few hours. Those people who usually take to television studios here and defend his behavior have been notably silent. The president himself has taken to Twitter, of course, to react to what's happened to him over the last 24 hours. And take a look at one message that he published on Twitter just a few hours ago. It said, "I feel very badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. Justice," in quotes there, by which he means the Department of Justice, part, of course, of his government, took a 12-year-old tax case, among other things, applied tremendous pressure on him, and unlike Michael Cohen, the president's former lawyer, he refused to make up stories in order to get a deal. Such respect, wrote President Trump, for a brave man. That is an astonishing thing for the President of the United States to say about a man who is now a convicted felon, his former campaign manager, convicted on 8 charges yesterday of defrauding the taxing authorities here in the United States to the tune of millions of dollars, and also defrauding banks. Paul Manafort now faces a possible jail sentence of 60 years as a result of that case. Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, is a much bigger problem for Donald Trump because the Paul Manafort case wasn't connected in any way to the 2016 election campaign. The issues surrounding Michael Cohen are directly related to the 2016 election campaign, with Mr. Cohen implicating the president in the payment of hush money to 2 women, including the adult film star Stormy Daniels, just days before the election, in a bid to make sure that she pulled out of a TV interview in which she was planning to disclose her affair with Donald Trump. And Michael Cohen stood up in court and said, "Yes, I was aware that I was doing all of this in a bid to try and influence the outcome of the election," and he said he was doing it at the direction of Donald Trump. President Trump himself, the only thing that he said publicly, we heard last night at a rally that he was addressing in West Virginia. And as you listen to the clip of what President Trump had to say there, sort of brushing aside the dreadful developments that had engulfed him in the White House, take a look also at the faces on the crowd behind him. Loyal Trump supporters, around 38% of voters in this country, and those loyal supporters down in West Virginia gave every indication last night that they are standing with him through, on this occasion, thin as well as thick. Take a listen.
I always say it, if I would have ever said that shortly after winning we're going to hit 4.1, those people back there would have said, this guy, no good. Fake news. Fake news. How fake are they? Fake news and the Russian witch hunt. We got a whole big combination. Where is the collusion? You know, they're still looking for collusion. Where is the collusion? Find some collusion. We want to find the collusion.
It's all quite staggering, isn't it, Simon? I'm just wondering where this leaves Donald Trump now.
24 hours or so since the verdict came in the Manafort case and we learnt of the plea agreement that Michael Cohen has struck. There's a different tone and a different feeling here in Washington, D.C. This very much seems like, at the very least, a punctuation mark in the history of Donald Trump's presidency. However, we are still a long way away from any kind of action that will see President Trump escorted out of office. Now, this November, there's an opportunity for Democrats, because we have the midterm elections less than 3 months away. If the Democrats win control of the House of Representatives, they could then move to begin impeachment proceedings against the president. And I suspect they'd do that within about 5 minutes of winning control of the House of Representatives. But Democrats would be on a sticky wicket, because they'd be going after Donald Trump over an issue of hush money to a woman with whom he allegedly had an affair. But bear in mind, many of these Democrats are the same Democrats who all those years ago said it was completely wrong to impeach Bill Clinton over his liaison with Monica Lewinsky at the White House. Republicans, by the same token, were aggressively enthused about impeaching Bill Clinton over the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And they're the ones now who are saying, well, hang on a second, we can't possibly talk about impeachment. The President of the United States hasn't been accused of wrongdoing. And the real issue now, I think, is what does Michael Cohen do next? Is he going to accept the roughly 5-year prison sentence that he faces as a result of his plea agreement, or is he now going to start cooperating with prosecutors? Remember, this man was Donald Trump's Mr. Fix-It for years in New York. He knows all the secrets of the inner workings of the Trump organization, the Trump family, and Donald Trump's private business as well. If he starts cooperating with the Robert Mueller probe, that poses potential disaster for Donald Trump, and it's got to be very worrying to those people immediately within the president's orbit.
I suspect we're going to be speaking to you frequently, Simon. Simon Marks in Washington. Zimbabweans have been allowed to witness their country's legal system in action. The Constitutional Court heard a petition challenging last month's election results, and for the first time ever, the case was broadcast on state television. The opposition MDC alliance narrowly lost the July 30th poll. It's accusing the governing ZANU-PF party and the Electoral Commission of fraud. For an update on events, AC Lumumba joins me. He's a senior ZANU-PF strategist. Very good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Talk us through what happened in court today.
So, for anybody who ever wondered if there was independence in the institutions in the country attached to the president, today was a demonstration, not only to the country but to the world, that the president doesn't control all institutions. He allowed the courts to make up their mind and allow ZBC, the national broadcaster, to broadcast publicly the events of the courts.
Because there were real concerns running up to this, particularly from the MDC, that the court's possibly not fair.
Absolutely. You know, over time we've heard the argument that there hasn't been media reforms in the country. Today was an indication that Zimbabwe is moving forward. There is a difference between President Emmerson Mnangagwa and President Mugabe. Secondly, we learned today just the depth of talent and gift, you know, both on the bench and that was in the advocates in the country. We saw some of the brightest minds in the country on all sides, whether they were representing the opposition, whether they were representing the respondents. We saw incredible talent in the country. The procedure that the Chief Justice laid out in the beginning was, first, we were going to hear from the respondents whose affidavits had not been heard first. Secondly, we were going to decide if or not we were going to accept the submission they had made. Then we would go into the opposition, the big story, the reason why we are at court in the first place. After that, we would allow anyone who wanted to respond from the respondents to get involved in that. What we saw going through the process is the court was trying to ascertain one thing. what do you want? When you say you've come to court, why are you here? So the reason why the opposition went to court is they wanted one of two things. The first thing they wanted is they wanted the court to say this election should be nullified. It should be nullified because it was an illegal election. The second thing they wanted is the court should declare Nelson Chamisa a winner. And they were supposed to argue this. So the arguments went on brilliantly. There was one fundamental problem, and the problem was the opposition kept failing to answer one question. Where is the evidence? And no matter how many times you asked them, no matter what theory they came up with, they fundamentally failed to answer the most sacrosanct part of going to court: where is the evidence? And as a result, everything was done in a day. Everybody was allowed to speak, and court will make its final findings on Friday.
And are you confident that regardless of the findings, whatever the result is will be accepted by whoever the loser is? I mean, we saw violence in the run-up to the elections. What's being done to make sure that doesn't happen?
When we saw violence taking place in Zimbabwe on August 1st, the reason there was violence is there was an insinuation and a mandate sent into the public by the opposition to say we have won and we have been cheated. And we reiterated over and over again that you could be right. Perhaps you were cheated. But before you send people's children onto the ground to get hurt in your name, can you show how you won? And they said, oh, we've got overwhelming evidence. Can I tell you? They said we're bringing the highest A-team, dream team from across Africa to come and defend in court that our overwhelming evidence shows that we won. Guess what they did when they got to court? They failed to show any evidence. So will there be violence as a result? No. And you know why there won't be violence? Like I said at the pretext, Zimbabweans showed today just how smart they are.
Can I bring in some Zimbabweans and what they've been saying about the case? Let's quickly listen to that, please.
I think the court, they must do it in good faith so that everyone must be satisfied after the ruling of the court. No matter which party is it, or no matter which candidate is it, no matter what circumstances or anything that has been happening before, I think we are just expecting everything to be free and fair.
It's important that the Zimbabweans are appeased, right? And that the country gets back to business as quickly as possible.
And that's what the country wanted. That's all Zimbabweans wanted. Zimbabweans didn't want a result. Zimbabweans wanted a fair process, a process where everybody gets to be heard and the court gets to make up its decision. By the way, the court hasn't made up the decision. But what was clear and evident is the due process to allow the ears of the country to listen was given audience, to allow evidence to be brought forward was given the platform to do so. And in the end, my call is President Emmerson Mnangagwa proceeds with the inauguration. There simply was no evidence that, you have to prove, the law of analysis is you have to prove evidence beyond reasonable doubt. That wasn't done today, and that's why I predict that the president will be inaugurated this weekend.
And let's leave it there. Thank you very much.
Yes.